When you think of the most iconic moments in team sports history, odds are that they come from a high-stakes win-or-go-home game. In basketball alone, the first plays that come to my mind are Jordan's game winner against the Jazz in 1998, Ray Allen's game and series-saving three-pointer in 2013, and LeBron's incredible chase-down block in 2016. All three of these moments hold significant weight in the NBA's history, and all three took place in elimination games. But where the NBA differs from many other sports leagues is their playoff format, where each round is contested in 7-game series. This isn't like the NFL, college football, or even college basketball, where each championship game is decided in one outing, thus making every playoff game a win-or-go-home scenario. No, the NBA needs 7 games to determine what team is the best. In most years, series are decided in 5 or 6 games, with the eventual champions having 1 or 2 off nights before raising to Larry O'Brien. In extremely rare cases, the eventual champions win 4 straight games and sweep their opponents en route to an NBA title. But what fans around the world and what you and I want is a 7-game series. Sure, dominance is fun to watch, and stacking all-time great teams up against each other in hypothetical scenarios is what we as fans do. But what's even more fun is setting aside the regular season and the playoffs, all the ups and downs of 100+ games, and settling it all in 48 minutes of basketball. In the league's 79-year history, only 19 NBA finals have gone to a Game 7, and up until this season, only 4 have been in the 21st century. But after the Pacers dismantled the Thunder in Game 6 on Friday, now after Sunday night, we'll have 5. So naturally, as a basketball fan, I asked myself, what does this mean? Well, Game 7s are seen as sacred ground, where stars become immortalized in history. The winner of Game 7 between the Pacers and Thunder will be remembered forever, and come Sunday night, we might see an all-time moment with our own eyes that rivals Jordan's shot or LeBron's chase-down block. This Sunday, we're witnessing history that we won't even know about until years down the line. For the Thunder, an NBA title would cap off a dominant season, where every advanced metric puts them in the upper echelon of all-time great NBA teams. And for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, adding an NBA title and maybe even a Finals MVP to an already legendary MVP season would put him in elite company, joining 10 now Hall of Famers to win the MVP and a Finals MVP in the same season. Meanwhile, for the Pacers, a win in the NBA Finals would cap off the most improbable finals run in NBA history, where they were underdogs in nearly every game they played this entire postseason. And for Tyrese Halliburton, adding a ring to one of the most clutch postseason runs in NBA history would do a lot for his legacy. There's a lot of stakes and implications that rest on this one game, and only time will tell who walks out of Oklahoma City as NBA champions. But what if there was a way to use the past to tell the future? As I said before, there have been 19 Game 7s in NBA Finals history, and thanks to the NBA's extensive database and catalog of past events, there has to be a way to at least watch part of every Game 7 ever played. So over the past couple of nights, I've been scrounging the internet, trying to find every piece of information I can find about each Game 7 in NBA Finals history, and right now, we're going to use that information to determine who walks out of Sunday night as NBA champions and who immortalizes their name in NBA history. Am I crazy for doing this? Absolutely, but it's all worth it if we can predict the future. So sit back and relax and let me take you through 79 years of NBA history in hopefully 30 minutes or less. We start our journey in 1951, where the 41-27 Rochester Royals, led by the infamous Arnie Big Slim Rison, took on the 36-30 New York Knicks. Now, footage is obviously hard to come by from nearly 100 years ago, and if there isn't any footage of Wilt's 100-point game in 1962, how would there be footage of some random finals game in the 50s? Well, that thought process stood relatively true, but we can fill in the blanks pretty easily. Both the Royals and Knicks were two slow-paced teams, in fact the two slowest paced teams in the NBA at the time. But what made them effective was their ability to score efficiently, as both teams were the top two teams in field goal percentage, standing at an astonishing 38% from the field as a team. And no, I'm not making those numbers up. Somehow making nearly 2 out of every 5 shots was a dominating offense in the 50s. But back to the series, the Knicks quickly fell down to a 3-0 deficit before rallying back and winning 3 in a row to force a Game 7 in Rochester. I mean, could you imagine the scenes in New York City if they somehow won 4 games in a row after dropping the first 3 games in the finals? Unfortunately though, we were robbed of those scenes, as the Royals barely escaped with a 4-point victory after hitting 29 of their 37 free throw attempts in one of the first successful foul baiting games ever. Speaking of heartbreaks for the Knicks, let's go to 1952, where the Minneapolis Lakers took on New York's team in the NBA Finals. This time, the Knicks got off to a better start, winning 2 of their first 4 games, including an overtime Game 4 victory where the team shot a ridiculous 54 free throws. I mean, were the Lakers really fouling the Knicks this much, or did the refs just have a crazy whistle in the 50s? Anyway, they split Games 5 and 6 and set up a second Game 7 in a row, but this time the Knicks didn't keep it so close. Basketball's first superstar, George Mikan, put up 22 points and 19 rebounds to lead the Lakers to a 17-point win in one of the only double-digit wins in a Game 7 in NBA Finals history. What's the takeaway here? Well, this set the precedent that superstars always show up in the biggest moments, and that in a series, if both teams seem relatively even, then the team with the best player will win most of the time. That takes us to 1954, where the Lakers once again found themselves in a Game 7 position, this time against the Syracuse Nationals, now the Philadelphia 76ers. In this series, the title of best player in the series was tied between Mikan and Dolph Schayes, the two best big men of the 50s. In this meeting, it was Schayes who got the best of Mikan, holding Mikan to just 2 for 10 shooting and 11 total points in Game 7. However, it was the Lakers who came out on top behind Jim Pollard and Clyde Lovelet's combined 35 points that powered the Lakers' 87 points to the Nationals' 80 points. Then we go to 1955, because for some reason the 50s just generated a bunch of Game 7s in the NBA Finals. But this time we get some new blood, because for the first time in the 50s, a team in New York or the Lakers didn't make the finals, and instead we'll watch last year's runner-ups in the Syracuse Nationals take on the Fort Wayne Pistons. By this time in the NBA, things were drastically changing, as the shot clock made its introduction into everyday play, and older stars like George Mikan couldn't adjust to the times. And, for the first time in this video, we actually have footage from the series. Let's take a look at it.
The Fort Wayne Pistons in the NBA's final playoff at Syracuse. Now the opening tap-off, Fort Wayne wearing the dark uniforms, and they get the ball. Mel Hutchins driving. Pretty play. Here's Syracuse, and note the sharp ball handling. Schayes passing behind his back to Seymour, who puts it away.
Wow, what a fun sport. I wonder if it'll last. Anyways, this game was actually super intense, as the game was tied with just seconds left on the clock, and the Nationals' George King buried a free throw to put Syracuse up by 1, but Fort Wayne still had possession and a chance to win the game. It was here that King made a ridiculously clutch play, coming up from behind a Fort Wayne ball handler and stealing the ball to secure the Nationals an NBA title. One of the first huge plays we'll see in this video, where someone steps up when it's needed most to win the game. When it comes down to the wire, each team needs someone they can trust, and in this case it was King, who shot 50% from the field and 100% from the free throw line as the team's leading scorer. And as much as I truly enjoyed watching elite basketball take place for the last 7 years, it's time to move on to the 1957 NBA Finals, where this guy made his finals debut. It was only a matter of time before we got to Mr. 11 rings himself, Bill Russell, but of all the rings he captured, this one was maybe the toughest to secure. Russell was matched up against the MVP Bob Pettit and the St. Louis Hawks, and after losing a heartbreaker in Game 6 by 2 points, both teams traveled to Boston to settle the series. Anyways, this Game 7 was maybe the greatest Game 7 we'll see in this video, as it went to double overtime after the Celtics blew a 6-point lead heading into the fourth quarter. But when it was all said and done, Tommy Heinsohn put up 37 points and 23 rebounds, along with Bill Russell's 19 points and 32 rebounds to take down the Hawks and win their first NBA title. Yes, the Hawks' top 3 guys accounted for 86 of their 123 points and a combined 43 rebounds. And yes, Bob Cousy put up what might be in contention for the worst Game 7 performance ever, going 2 for 20 in 58 minutes. But the Celtics still pulled away and won the last Game 7 in the 1950s, and thank God for that, because things are about to start heating up. And what better way to start the decade than a rematch between the Celtics and Hawks, but with more added history. In 1958, the Celtics and Hawks also met in the NBA Finals, but a Bill Russell ankle sprain caused him to miss games 4 and 5, which ultimately cost the Celtics a chance to repeat and gave the Hawks and Bob Pettit their first NBA title. The following year, the Celtics swept the Lakers in their first and definitely not last finals meeting, and now here we are in 1960, the first trilogy in NBA history to determine who walks out as world champs. But unlike their last encounter, this one went a little more straightforward. See, this Celtics team is often regarded as an early super team, with 7 future Hall of Famers on this roster. And with 2 all-time greats in Russell and Cousy at least somewhat in their prime, it was nearly impossible to beat them fully healthy. Sure, the Hawks put up a good fight, and they themselves had 4 future Hall of Famers on their roster, but a monster second quarter from the Celtics, where they put themselves up by 17 points at halftime, created too big of a deficit for the Hawks to overcome, and the Celtics defeated the Hawks 122-103 in the biggest blowout in NBA Finals Game 7 history. At this time, it felt like the Celtics and the Hawks would be the teams of the decade, with both trading finals appearances and championship trophies for the rest of the 60s. But while the Celtics lived up to the hype, the Hawks started to fade away, despite their stars Bob Pettit and Cliff Hagan playing elite basketball for 6 to 7 more years after these finals. The team that took their place besides the Celtics as the greatest teams of the 60s was, of course, the Los Angeles Lakers. And these two teams would match up for the 3 remaining Game 7s in NBA Finals this decade. Our first matchup was in 1962, and for the second time in this video we have an overtime Game 7. The Lakers had 2 all-time greats in Jerry West and Elgin Baylor leading the charge, putting up a combined 76 points. But it was Frank Selvey who shot 20% from the field during this game that took the final shot for the Lakers in regulation, missing a wide-open 12-foot jump shot to send the game to overtime. It was here that Bill Russell put his handprint on this game, putting up arguably the greatest Game 7 performance of all time with 30 points and 40 rebounds, leading the Celtics to a 3-point victory in Boston. We're heading back to Boston 4 years later in 1966, with Boston bringing home 4 straight NBA titles during that time span, but this time the Celtics were more beatable than ever. Superstar Bob Cousy retired 3 years earlier, and the Celtics had just lost 2 games in a row, including Game 5 in Boston. However, it was Boston who came out scorching hot, jumping out to a 15-point lead at half, and as we saw in 1960 when the Celtics led by 17 at half and ended up winning by 19, this game was all but over. But then the Lakers did what the Hawks couldn't and started slowly making a comeback. After head coach Red Auerbach lit his now iconic victory cigar late in the fourth quarter, the Lakers made 2 quick buckets to bring it to a 1-possession game. However, despite LA's comeback, the Celtics held on and won the game 95-93. Jerry West had an incredible game, scoring 36 points and taking the offensive responsibilities from the struggling Elgin Baylor, who shot 6 for 22 for the game, but it wasn't enough to stop Bill Russell's 25 points and 32 rebounds, and 25-year-old John Havlicek, who had 16 points and 16 assists in the victory. Their final meeting this decade took place in 1969, where now player-coach Bill Russell led the Celtics to the finals despite finishing 4th in the East. If you thought the Celtics were beatable in 1966, you should have seen them in 1969. The pieces that built the Celtics dynasty in the 60s were all gone, and all that was left was Russell, who after this season would retire. Meanwhile, the Lakers finished the season with the best record in the NBA, meaning they would hold home court advantage for Game 7, and they added Russell's biggest rival, Wilt Chamberlain, a year prior. Everything was pointing toward LA winning their first NBA title over the Celtics, and with Bill Russell scoring only 6 points and grabbing only 21 rebounds, which I know it's ridiculous to say only 21 rebounds, but for Russell, that's putrid. The Lakers should hold the NBA title at the end of the game knowing those stats, right? Well, Jerry West had a phenomenal game, scoring 42 points, grabbing 13 rebounds, and dishing out 12 assists in a masterclass that earned him the first ever Finals MVP. But rough shooting performances from his supporting cast and incredible efficiency from Havlicek and the rest of the Celtics led to Boston improbably winning the NBA Finals by 2 points. I mean, can you have worse luck than that? Losing to the same team in 2 Game 7s, watching them weaken throughout the decade while you get stronger, only to lose at home for the 3rd straight Game 7, and not being able to get your get back because everybody who beat you on the rival team has retired because they beat you so much. That's just so unfortunate, but thankfully their core has just enough left to make a couple more finals pushes, which, speaking of, 1 year later, and the Los Angeles Lakers are back to a Game 7 in the NBA Finals, this time against the New York Knicks, who featured the league MVP Willis Reed. Unfortunately for Reed, he tore his thigh muscle in Game 5 and was ruled out for Game 6, where the Knicks lost by 22 in LA. Game 7 would take place in New York, and with there being almost no chance that Willis comes back from this injury, it was pretty much set in stone. And wait, what? So you're telling me that Willis Reed is going to play on a torn thigh muscle, which would take the average human 3 months to recover from, just to rally his team in Game 7? I mean, how much better can a Game 7 get? Willis Reed was obviously terrible in this contest, putting up 4 points and 3 rebounds in 27 minutes, but just his mere presence was enough to rally the Knicks in Madison Square Garden and take home their first NBA title behind Walt Frazier's 36 points, 19 assists, and 7 rebounds. You want to talk about unlucky? I mean, the Lakers probably thought they had this series in the bag when Willis got hurt, but then to go into New York and see Willis Reed walk out of that tunnel to a huge ovation, and then to get stomped in the first half, being down by 27 points at halftime, that must have been a huge blow to everyone in that locker room. Thankfully, the Lakers would win the 1972 NBA title and break their curse, but man, the emotional damage from losing so many finals in a row must have haunted everyone on that team during their careers and even after their careers. So good for the Lakers for winning in 1972, but as we have learned in this video, nothing good happens to the Lakers without something even better happening to the Celtics. And to no one's surprise, Boston is back in title contention with veteran John Havlicek leading the way. This time they were on the road in Game 7 against the Milwaukee Bucks and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who at that time was the most dominant force the NBA had ever seen. Thankfully for Boston, they had former MVP Dave Cowens to match up with Kareem, though stopping Kareem at that time was easier said than done. In the end, it was Boston who of course came out on top thanks to great all-around performances from their top 7 guys, and a terrible performance from 35-year-old Oscar Robertson, who went 2 for 13 from the field and retired after this game. This was the second time that the away team won a Game 7, and the only time that an away team has won by double digits in Game 7, as the Celtics cruised to a 102-87 victory. Then, in 1978, we had one of the most forgettable finals series ever between the Washington Bullets and Seattle Supersonics. The late 70s were really one of the worst periods of time in NBA history, as many superstars were drinking Coca-Cola, if you get my drift, and teams paid 18-year-olds more than established superstars, which caused many young talents to come into the league with big egos and guaranteed contracts. Because of that, player quality was at an all-time low, and superstars were rare to come by. Take Kareem, for example, who at this time was 30 years old and coming off 2 back-to-back MVP awards. His supporting cast was a young Adrian Dantley, James Edwards, and Earl Tatum. Not exactly the best guys to be playing with in the middle of your prime. Oh yeah, and he also punched Kent Benson in the face 2 minutes into the very first game of the season, breaking his hand and forcing him out until early December. In fact, that situation perfectly describes this 1970s NBA. Stupid decisions by players and front offices that almost ruined the game of basketball. Anyways, the Bullets and Sonics somehow reached the finals not only this year, but next year as well, and actually put on an entertaining yet low-rated series. This was evidenced by this series going 7 games, and now for the second time in a row, and for the third time in the last 4 Game 7s, the road team won, with the Bullets escaping Seattle with an NBA title behind Wes Unseld's 15 points and 9 rebounds. Seattle got 2 great games out of Marvin Webster and Jack Sikma, who combined for 48 total points, but it was Dennis Johnson who cost them the game, having by far the worst Game 7 performance you will ever see anyone have, going 0 for 14 from the field and almost single-handedly costing the Sonics their first title. Thankfully, Johnson made up for it the following year as the Sonics won the 1979 title in 5 games, but man did he put up a stinker in this one. It was at this point in time that the NBA and this video needed a jumpstart to get people back interested in it again. The 1970s were fine, but lots of different situations, from the ABA stealing NBA superstars, to tape delays ruining finals matchups, to that whole Coca-Cola thing, led this to be the worst decade in NBA history, somehow even worse than the 1950s. But thankfully, 2 rivals, just so happened to be entering the NBA at the very same time, and their decade-long rivalry would shape the... Let's go now to 1984, 4 years after Magic Johnson and Larry Bird entered the NBA and revitalized interest in the game of basketball. At this time, both guys had already won an NBA title and established themselves as the best players in the sport, but somehow they hadn't matched up in the finals until now. And of course, there's no better way for their first finals to end than in a Game 7. Of course, many remember the 1984 NBA Finals for Game 4, where with less than a minute left, Magic Johnson earned the nickname Tragic Johnson after almost single-handedly choking a 5-point lead with less than a minute left. But the Lakers responded well in Game 6 with a double-digit win to set up a Game 7 in Boston. This was a physical, hard-fought game where only one side benefited from referee calls, as the Celtics shot 51 free throws to the Lakers' 28, including a combined 26 makes on 29 attempts from Game 7 legend Dennis Johnson and Cedric Maxwell to secure a 111-102 finals victory over the Lakers. Now, this wouldn't be the last time these two foes met in the finals, as the Lakers would take home the 1985 and 1987 NBA title over the Celtics, but now in 1988 there was a new top dog in the Eastern Conference, that being the Detroit Pistons. And following one of the most resilient performances in NBA history, where Isaiah Thomas scored 43 points in a Game 6 loss, including 25 points in the third quarter while on a sprained ankle, the Lakers forced a Game 7 in LA. But with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on his last legs, and this entire Lakers team starting to slow down, there was a world where the Pistons pulled off the upset and started their reign as NBA champs. But big game James Worthy had the greatest game of his career, putting up a 36-point triple-double to lead the Lakers past the Pistons, and an injured Isaiah Thomas, who put up 10 points on 12 shots. As a team, the Lakers shot nearly 10 percentage points higher than the Pistons from the field, and sealed the game in the third quarter as they outscored Detroit by 15 points, and held off a late rally to win 108-105. That would be our last Game 7 of the decade, one ruled by a rivalry that reinvigorated interest in a seemingly declining league. But even before Magic and Bird decided to call it quits in the 90s, there was a new face of the league, that being Michael Jordan. His Chicago Bulls fell short 2 years in a row in the late 80s, as the Pistons would later avenge their finals loss against the Lakers in '89 and take down the Trailblazers in 1990. But Jordan got his revenge the following seasons, and for the first time since Bill Russell, we had a team three-peat, or win 3 NBA titles in a row. But after taking down the Suns in 1993, Jordan decided to pursue professional baseball, seemingly closing the chapter on his basketball career and leaving the NBA without a face of the league. Enter Hakeem Olajuwon, the dominant Nigerian center who won MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in the season following Jordan's retirement. And for the second time in his career, he would make it to the NBA Finals, matching up against another dominant center of this era, Patrick Ewing, in the New York Knicks. Unfortunately, the series is now remembered for its involvement in split-screen action with the O.J. Simpson Bronco chase, a game where the Knicks pulled away at the end to take a 3-2 series advantage. But after a 2-point victory, the Rockets maintained home court advantage for Game 7. This game can almost characterize the entire concept of 90s basketball in 48 minutes. This was a tough-nosed, grinded-out contest between two defensively stout, physical teams. But a new contender for worst Game 7 in NBA Finals history just emerged in this game, as John Starks shot 2 for 18 from the field and 0 for 11 from 3 to shoot the Knicks out of the game and give the Rockets their first NBA title in franchise history. That, alongside an Olajuwon 25-point, 10 rebound and 7 assist performance, gave us a conclusion to the only Game 7 in the 90s. Hakeem stood on top of the NBA the following season, but after Jordan's return late in the 1995 season, the Bulls once again three-peated before Jordan retired, this time for good. Oh yeah, let's just pretend that didn't happen. Anyways, following Jordan's retirement and a lockout in the 1999 season, we needed to crown a new NBA champion, and who else to step up in a forgettable season than Tim Duncan? That's right, the third-year sensation from Wake Forest would make his finals debut in this season and secure his first NBA title, defeating the Knicks in 5 games. Of course, the early 2000s would be ruled by the Lakers, more on them later, but there was certainly an argument that come 2005, Tim Duncan was the best player in the world. But the reigning champions at the time were the Detroit Pistons, who, after defeating the super team Lakers in 2004, were looking to repeat following an incident early on in the season at the Palace at Auburn Hills, or the Pistons' old arena. But to repeat, they would have to get through Tim Duncan and the Spurs, who picked up another NBA title in 2003 and were looking for their third in 7 years. With two great teams taking the court every night, of course we had to have a Game 7, and it was here that early 2000s basketball was truly epitomized. We were too early for the three-point revolution and too late for the flashy, high-paced style of basketball that dominated the 80s. Instead, we were stuck in no man's land, where teams struggled to put out competent offenses on a nightly basis for a number of reasons, the most prominent being the physical style of defense played by every team in the NBA. At this time, two of the best defenses in the NBA were the Spurs and Pistons, so naturally their final series was low-paced and low-scoring. It was here, though, that a great game from Manu Ginobili and an okay performance from Tim Duncan got the job done, as Detroit's all-around efforts weren't enough to stop San Antonio, and the Spurs would take down the Pistons 81-74. Once again, we were at a turning point in the NBA, though. Young stars like LeBron James and Dwayne Wade were making finals runs, but couldn't consistently make it to the top. The Spurs were the dominant team in the NBA, but were considered boring and not entertaining, thus not bringing in the ratings. What the NBA needed was for an iconic rivalry to get thrust back into the forefront. And after trading for Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, the Celtics were back in title contention, and in 2008 would defeat the Lakers and newly acquired Pau Gasol in 5 games. 2009 saw the Lakers go back to the NBA Finals, this time taking down the Orlando Magic, but when everyone wanted to see was a rematch of 2008, LA versus Boston, the two best teams in the NBA going at it in a 7-game series. And in 2010, we got exactly that. Following a 22-point win at home, the Lakers secured a Game 7 in LA with a chance to do what their 60s and 80s counterparts couldn't do, beat Boston in a Game 7. At first, that vision didn't look so promising, as the Lakers made only 2 shots in the entire first quarter and entered the second quarter at a 9-point deficit. But that didn't stop LA. They came roaring back, and despite bad games from Kobe, who shot 6 for 24, and Pau Gasol, who shot 6 for 16, the Lakers took Game 7 at home and gave Kobe his 5th ring. What really helped LA in this contest was offensive rebounding, as guys like Gasol, Andrew Bynum, Lamar Odom, even Meta World Peace, they all contributed to a team total of 25 offensive rebounds to the Celtics' 8. Those second chance opportunities came up huge throughout this contest and gave LA the victory over Boston. But with these two cores starting to age out of their prime, I guess it's time to check in on LeBron and the Cavaliers and Dwayne Wade on the Heat. Hey guys, how's it going? Oh wow. So that happened. Yeah, so LeBron, Wade, and Chris Bosh, all top picks in the 2003 NBA draft, decided to team up in Miami in the 2010 offseason to create what many consider to be the first super team. And after a stumble in the 2011 finals, the Heat won their second ring in franchise history, and LeBron, the NBA's chosen one, won his first NBA title. Flash forward to 2013, where the Miami Heat survived a conference finals scare against the Pacers, and their reward for making it to back-to-back finals is the San Antonio Spurs, who haven't made the finals since 2007, where they dismantled LeBron and the Cavaliers in a 4-game sweep. Now, with a proper supporting cast, it was time for LeBron to avenge one of the only stains on his legacy. But before there could be a Game 7, there had to be a Game 6. And after holding a 2-point lead with 20 seconds left, and holding a 3-2 series lead, the Spurs looked in control to win the NBA Finals. But after Kawhi Leonard missed his first of 2 free throws, the Heat were back in the game. Then, after Leonard made his second free throw, it was a 3-point game. With 7 seconds left in the contest, LeBron took a 3 at the top of the key and it rimmed out perfectly to Chris Bosh, who calmly looked behind him to a backpedaling Ray Allen. Allen grabbed the pass and instantly fired a 3 from the corner, swishing it and sending this game to overtime. Eventually, the Heat would win in overtime and force a Game 7 in Miami. This game also came down to the wire, as just with 1 minute left, the Spurs were down by 2 with the ball and had a chance to tie. And of course, they gave the ball to Tim Duncan, who immediately went to work before putting up a 10-foot hook shot that he's made thousands of times in his career, but couldn't get it to fall tonight. It was this miss that led the Heat to maintain momentum and close out the game and series, giving LeBron his first and only back-to-back rings and handing the Spurs their first finals loss in NBA history. The following season, these two teams matched up once again in the finals, though this time it was San Antonio who decimated Miami, ending LeBron's tenure in South Beach and opening up the doors for him to make his glorious return back to Cleveland. And that he did, though in his first season they fell short of a Larry O'Brien as the upstart Golden State Warriors took down the Cavaliers in 6 games and looked to be the next dominant force in NBA history. Little did we know that just 1 year later, the Warriors would break the Chicago Bulls record of most wins in regular season, finishing 73-9 and holding a 3-1 series lead over the Cavaliers in a finals rematch. All the Warriors needed to do was win 1 game in their next 3 contests, something that Golden State did for the entirety of the season. Just win 1. The Cavaliers took down the Warriors in Game 5 at Golden State, but that's okay because Draymond was suspended for accumulating too many flagrant fouls, and the team wasn't fully healthy. Understandable. Now you just have to win one of the next 2 games. Well, in Game 6, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson showed out, scoring a combined 55 points, but LeBron put up 41 points and 10 assists to force a Game 7 in Golden State. Oh boy. Now things are starting to get serious. Game 7, win or home, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of history. So what do, Golden State? You let Harrison Barnes and Festus Ezeli go a combined 1 for 8 from the field in the first quarter, allowing slow starts from LeBron and Kyrie Irving to go unpunished. You have a great second quarter headlined by Draymond Green hitting all 4 of his 3-point attempts, and you have a lead going into halftime. Then you blow it all away in the third quarter despite holding LeBron to 1 for 5 shooting. Sure, you did your job containing the best player in the world, but everyone else only missed 2 shots in the quarter, and now that 7-point lead you had coming out of halftime was just a 1-point lead. Now it was time for the superstars to show up. Would it be the reigning back-to-back MVP Steph Curry or the best player in the world in LeBron James who would raise a finals trophy in just 12 minutes? Well, it certainly wouldn't be Steph Curry because he went 1 for 6 in the fourth quarter, but hey, the good news is that LeBron went 3 for 8 and you're still in this game. Now it's tied at 89 apiece with 2 minutes left, and hey, after forcing a Kyrie Irving miss, you have a 2-on-1 fast break advantage. I mean, what could go wrong? Oh, that happened. But it's okay because you still have this knotted at 89 with 1 minute left. All you need is a stop and surely you can close it out, right? Oh, that happened too. At this point, it was all but over. The Cavaliers made history and took down the greatest regular season team of all time by winning 3 games in a row, including 2 at Oracle Arena. And now that takes us to 2025, where later tonight, or if you're watching this after June 22nd earlier this year, the Oklahoma City Thunder and Indiana Pacers will clash in the 20th Game 7 in NBA Finals history. So why did I just spend 30 minutes of your time going over all that with you? Well, history can give us a sense of what the future will look like. And while you may not recognize it, what Arnie Big Slim Rison did in the 1950s, and yes, I said Arnie Rison's name twice because his nickname is hilarious, get over it. What he did in the 1950s helped shape my understanding of what's going to happen in Game 7 on Sunday night. See, I learned today that precedents always have a starting point, and cliches are created because they have some form of meaning. You always hear old heads say that superstars show up in big moments and role players always play better at home. It's cliche to say, but it's always true. I can't tell you the amount of times I saw a winning team's best player rise up in the biggest moments. I can't tell you the amount of role players I saw hit open yet crucial shots to secure victories for their teams. Each narrative that seems redundant actually matters a lot in the grand scheme of things. So by taking into account the 19 previous Game 7s played and retold, I can confidently predict that I have no earthly idea who walks out victorious on Sunday night. History tells me that the Thunder are the obvious pick, as home teams have won 15 of 19 Game 7s. It also tells me that in most cases, the better team with the better player will win, and in this case, the Thunder are just better than the Pacers. But history also tells me that experience matters, and while the players on the court may not have the experience you'd hope for in this situation, one man on the Indiana Pacers bench does, and that's Rick Carlisle. Sure, 2011 was a completely different scenario than what he's challenging today, but Carlisle has beaten juggernauts before, and after watching the Pacers this series, I wouldn't be shocked if they did it again. And if you take a look at most of these Game 7s, majority of the time, the team who won Game 6 carries momentum into Game 7 and secures a title. In Game 6, the Pacers dominated and outworked the Thunder throughout the entire 48 minutes. So what's stopping them from doing the same in Game 7? For as easy as a decision as it may seem, and in retrospect, it may seem easy 6 months down the line if the Thunder win the title, I still don't know who will win this game, and that's okay. Some things aren't meant to be predicted. What I can predict though is that this moment, this game, whether monumental at the time or not, will forever live in history and shape the future of Game 7s as we know it.